Welcome to another episode of the Next Generation podcast. Today I have Emma with Double E Ranch on with me, and y'all, I am so excited. The energy that Emma has already brought to our pre-recording conversation has been amazing, and she is truly just a powerhouse for advocating for agriculture. If you if you have the app TikTok or Instagram and you haven't seen Emma come across your For You page at any point in time, I don't believe that you're actually involved in agriculture. She is just absolutely amazing, and I am so excited to have her on today. Emma, I would love it if you could just take it away, share a little bit about you, your journey, your story, all the things.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having me and asking me to be on. And that was quite the intro. Thank you. I'm very flattered. Um, So my name is Emma Coffman. I am the founder and owner of Double E Ranch Advocacy. And so I am not a second, third, fourth, fifth gen agriculturalist. My mother was in the military. My dad was in finance. And my introduction to agriculture was actually through 4-H. And that's how my passion for agriculture started. So I understand coming from absolutely no education or foundation in food production to learning what is going on, why do we do what we do, to then being in the industry. And I think that liaison of communication from ground zero to the highest tower of, at least in my professional career, that's not always something that's easy. And that's something that I was very passionate about. And again, 4-H really fueled that. So shout out to Texas 4-H and the AgriLife Extension Services. But that's really kind of where my passion started, was in the 4-H. And we did this whole thing where it's the Texas 4-H Ambassador, Livestock Ambassador Program. And there's a bunch of stipulations on what you had to do. But part of it was spending time out in the field at livestock shows, the majors, and then also at grocery stores and talking to the everyday consumer. And that was really where my eyes were open on how the lack of information is being provided to these people who are consuming our fibers and our food on a everyday basis. So I went to A&M. I was very fortunate that I knew exactly what major I wanted, which was animal science. I was also very fortunate that I had a great professor, staff, and faculty. They were very supportive, very encouraging. And when I started getting more experience in different areas, that's where my eyes were also opened to that, hey, there's a whole other world besides U.S. agriculture. Did a study abroad in Australia, loved it, took a job over there. COVID kind of rerouted what I thought I was going to be able to do. And that's where my professional career started in sales. Started with Purina as a livestock production specialist. Look, the two things I said I would never be was a sales rep and a nutrition. First, right out of the gate, I was both of those. So my mentor, Dr. Clark Springfield at A&M, he called it back when I was a sophomore in college. So never say never. And then was there for a while. Then Zoetis approached me with a job coming back into Texas because I was in Virginia with Purina. Came back to Texas with feedlot data management systems. So I covered New Mexico, Texas, and Oklahoma. Really got to see the feeder side. That was one part of the industry that I didn't really have a lot of experience in. I knew cow-calf. I loved repro. That's what I thought I was going to do in Australia. That's kind of that and stocker operations, which is that middle between the cow-calf operation and the feedlot. That's your middle chapter. Got to do a lot with those with Purina. Now I got to see where the end stage was. Talk to small to medium size grow yards, feed yards, and of course being in the panhandle, got to meet and see a lot of larger side of the operations, beef on dairies. And then when the closure of my division happened, went over and managed a cow-calf operation in Perryton, Texas, got on the management side. That also exposed me quite a bit on how day work helps, even just more pasture and range management. And then that was a very temporary gig. That wasn't a pre-established, hey, I am here to fix some issues, get the road smooth again, and then get another job that comes with healthcare. So that's where I took a job with Vitelli doing cattle IVF, covered 5 states doing that. Now I was going from I wouldn't say bottom of the barrel, but definitely limited financial resources from the beginning of my career to now these people are dealing with high-end genetics that understand the importance of their inputs, and they're okay with spending more on the front end because they could see the future down the road. Vastly two different industries. And that was really fun. And then they had to downsize drastically. And that's when I felt God calling me. I've been doing the advocacy for about 2.5 years now. And I just felt the Lord calling me like, hey, you prayed for clarity. You prayed for this. I have now provided this to you. So your turn, sister. Like, come on, step up to the plate. And so now this is my full time where I travel around. We are starting a podcast called The Bridge. And what that will be is think of like, you remember Dirty Jobs with Mike Rowe, the old TV show?
Yes.
Yes. So think of that style of content, but all agriculture. Like we've got Corona Modelo already on the list. We've got Bayer Chemical. We've got farmers, ranchers, cattle producers, cotton farmers, a fashion designer that deals nothing but natural fibers, a
Wow.
wool importer and exporter. So providing a window in visualization and explanation of where their food and fiber comes from, how it's produced, why it's produced, it is, and more of a visualization versus sitting in front of a microphone in a random podcast studio in Fort Worth or in the panhandle of Texas, and providing more interaction of the consumer. Then we have a website where every location where we do a episode that provides a service or product, there'll be an interactive website that says, hey, if you like this product or service, you want to do business with this person, here's their direct contact information if that producer wants to move forward with that. And it also has an education and resource page. So now, instead of trying to figure, because research is really hard, it's a lot harder than what people think it is, finding accurate information that is not biased, nor is it a fear-based marketing tactic to sell an idea. It takes hundreds of hours, and I don't need to reinvent the wheel. What I can do is take the current information that's out there and put it all on one platform. So take anything from the cattle side to the cotton side, apples, whatever the commodity is. If there is a educational piece that we can put in place that's based off of scientific data, that's factual, unbiased, then we have a resource page that allows consumers and producers alike to learn more about whatever topic they're wanting to find out about. So,
You guys know when I like introed Emma and I said like she's a powerhouse in agriculture, I needed to include in that like she does everything, has done everything. And oh my gosh, like just I hope that you guys are as just like flawed. I secretly knew a lot of this stuff about Emma already, but if you didn't, I hope that you're like sitting back in your seat like holy cow, like this girl came from like not being involved in agriculture to now being just such an amazing powerhouse advocate for agriculture and being someone that is bringing new and vital information to the industry and bridging so many gaps, no pun intended there, and just like doing all of the things. Emma, wow, holy cow. I cannot wait to see how like all of this continues to develop and everything like that. Can you talk just a little bit more on your advocacy journey and what that's kind of birthed from and then led to and just all the things like that?
you're like the best type woman. Like, I'm going to call you when I have a bad day, be like, make me feel good. No. First of all,
Yes, you got it.
thank you. Yeah, it's a whirlwind. It's definitely not like I thought I'd be breeding cows the rest of my life. Being on social media and starting this up was not on my bingo card. But here we are. So the advocacy kind of, it just, kind of happened. I realized that throughout my sales conversations, part of the reason that I performed so well in the sales role was I love people. I love talking to people, whether they're super knowledgeable or very basic in information. I love learning and regurgitating that information to those who also didn't know whatever topic what we're discussing. So because I think that a lot of times we get scared to ask questions of why. Like, why do you do this? What does that mean? And I think that in agriculture, we've been attacked by activist groups and people with maybe ill intentions repeatedly. That our first knee jerk reaction when we get asked a question is defense. And I think that now more than ever, at least in my lifetime, people are actually wanting to learn and know. The problem is we oftentimes are the last industry to jump on a improvement when it comes in modernization, when it comes to either marketing, communication, especially branding. And there's been a lot of other companies out there and industries that see the dollar and they give you the feel good words that promote your purchasing decision. Organic, all natural. A lot of these things are nothing but a marketing scheme. And so the way that I kind of fell into this was I actually owned a photography company. That's how I kind of put myself through college. I worked 4 jobs. I don't recommend that. But I did photography and I got really tired of doing weddings and portraits. And throughout my career as a photographer, I had done rodeo, especially stock show photography. And I thought, okay, like let me pick that up as a side hustle again. But instead of committing as a contractor, unless it's a really good show that's kind of local, and I say local within a 5-hour drive because I'm in the Panhandle and nothing's local. But I wanted to take some like rustic Western stock images. And I thought, I'll get an Etsy shop and I'll just put that on there. And so ironically, this man and his company was my customer when I was with Zoetis. And then that is actually the company that hired me, or the ranch that hired me as a manager later on. So full circle, very funny. But I asked him if I could take pictures of his branding. He's like, yeah, come on out. And he goes, you know what? You need to get it. You need a TikTok. I thought, absolutely not. I am not going to be dancing in front of a camera. And this was back in 2021. So this was still where TikTok was hitting hard, but it was like, let's synchronize to a dance. And there really wasn't much creativity outside of like jumping on trends. And I thought, absolutely not. He goes, no, you don't understand. This is like the modern day Facebook. Also, that's a lie. But he convinced me to get a TikTok. I think I made 1 or 2 episodes, and then I found the vegan teacher. Miss Ma'am perturbed me deeply. And I think that we always heard stories about people of her behavior and her demeanor and character, but I hadn't really actually seen it firsthand until that. And I don't know if it triggered me or whatever, but the next thing I know, I'm over here trying to educate in a fun way, and I fell victim to the dancing. I thought we wouldn't do that. I'm not a dancer, and my content should show that. Unless it's 2-stepping or a waltz, we're not exactly like dance moms. But I was trying to push forward the information in a captivating way and in a trending way, and combine what people were watching and form that content to fit and have the platform push that content, but bring an educational piece to it. And so as that started to progress, I got asked to be on a couple of podcasts, and then it just was a slippery slope from there. I was like, all right, this is a water slide. Throw that dish soap on the thing. Like, we're about to go. I mean, we went fast. And the growth has been incredible. I've been very blessed. I've had some companies and people really believe in what I'm doing. And I think my biggest advice is if you own a business, that's a great platform to advocate for your business, but maybe not if you're employed through a company. Because I was very vocal about like what I was doing and the products and the company I was with, and I don't regret that because I think it was a lot of information and technology that needed to be pushed out there. I think that I wish I had been coming from more of a um, detached standpoint. And I think that any kind of information, if it is a factual or if it's a product, you need to be very straight to the point and take your personal motives out of it. And I think that can be really hard. You get a lot of people like the vegans that come on. And I say veganism, and I think that I'm mislabeling that. I would say the activist groups. Um, that come on there and attempt to debunk. There's a lot of negativity out on the internet, and unfortunately, it's the negativity that tends to get traction. Trying to combat that and actually gain the same kind of momentums of view and interactions and engagement is very difficult. I wouldn't say impossible, but very difficult. And I don't want my platform to be fear-based marketing. I think some of the hooks that you have to use or you should use to try to grab attention is one thing. But if you watch the videos in their entirety, the objective is never to scare you into a decision or into a viewpoint. It should be for you to think, to want to ask questions, want to learn more, and even better, to do your own research. Our world is pretty lazy when it comes to doing independent research because it is very difficult to find accurate information. The amount of hours and quite literally days worth of research to make sure that the information I'm giving is accurate, current, and applicable is very difficult. So I don't blame consumers for not spending hours and hours and hours. What I do hold people accountable, especially if you're in the production space, is if you are a grass-fed operation or you're an organic or all natural, you are choosing a management practice. Even if you personally believe that that is the best quality of product that you, and we're just using beef as an example, if you personally believe that that is the best quality that you can produce, that's fine. What I do have an issue with, or what you should not do, is use false information to try to scare people. If you say, hey, grass-fed has more omega-3 fatty acids than grain-fed, yes, it does by a split of a nanogram. I mean, I think it's like 2 or 3 nanograms more. If you're really concerned about omega-3 fatty acids, that is not enough for you to make that kind of decision. If you want omega-3s, let's go eat some salmon. So that's where my issue, and then that's within the industry, because we feel a pressure exterior-wise from other industries encroaching on our production, that now we're trying to compete against each other. And I think that's always been the case. I think it will always be a case. I mean, that's like Case versus John Deere, right? I mean, we're better. No, we're better. And it's always going to be there. But now that the general public is truly wanting to know how and where their food is produced, we need to be transparent, but we also need to be accurate and honest with factual information.
That is one of the biggest issues that I also see in agriculture today, is especially like we are fighting so much exteriorly
Mm-hmm.
and we can't stop fighting with each other.
Yeah.
We can't stop pushing and butting heads with other sectors of agriculture as agriculturalists, to just like, we don't have a united front by any means. And I have ultimate respect for people that like, they're, if there is a need in the consumer market for a product and service, as agriculturalists, we need to be providing for that. I absolutely believe in that. But we need to be doing it in a way that's not playing into people's fear-based marketing, but it's like, hey, this is just like a management practice that we choose to do. Our steers are grass finished, whatever, done all of that because we choose to just let them out on pasture, and then we catch them and they just go to the butcher. Like that's what we choose to do. We don't choose to have them dry lotted at the house and have to feed them grain every single day. Like, hey, we want to go on vacation and be gone for a week and not have to worry about it. Like, if that's a management practice you want to do, then great. But like, don't make it something that is like you're playing into their hands, is genuinely what it is. I think that so often the activists are ahead of us as advocates by whopping miles on so many different things. And we are so often playing defense rather than on the offense. We're not getting ahead of these topics. We're not getting ahead of trends. We're responding to them consistently. And we have great advocates within the industry that do a great job at responding to these things, but we're responding too late. Even if you respond a minute later, it's already out there. Like it, and it always will be. I'm not saying it's not going to be there. It's always going to be there. But I think one of the biggest things as agriculturalists, like you kind of said earlier, we're already behind as an industry. When I was in the corporate side of agriculture, I always joke that we are about 10 years behind every other industry. And that is the truth. And it's not something that changes overnight. It's just genuinely kind of like the trick of the trade. It's kind of the hand that we were dealt in a lot of scenarios, but doing whatever we can to get ahead, be proactive, truly educate people and educate people from a scientific standpoint. Like you said, it's really, really hard to find non-biased information out there. Like, even if I remember like being in school when we were young and having to use like Google Scholar and find the scientific studies and like all of that stuff, like those, I know how to do all of that. But even if you go and do that, you have to make sure that they're non-biased. Like, who's supporting the study? Who's funding it? Who did it? How was it controlled? All of this stuff. And so it's like, you can't even, I'm trying to like go find accurate information, and now I have to spend 2 hours just making sure, like checking all the boxes before I can even read it and cite this source as an accurate source.
Absolutely.
So it's a lot of uphill battles.
It is. And it's everywhere too. So you touched on a really great point talking about unbiased, supported research papers. The health industry, and I think a lot of people are starting to wake up about the pharmaceutical industry. Explain to me why the majority of our health systems and education systems, if you want to be a doctor, I forget the statistic, but the majority of your, I think it's like 85% of your courses are in pharmacology. There's only a couple of, I think there's only a couple of universities out in the United States that require you to take a nutrition class. Why are we requiring people to learn about drugs and not the health and nutrition side? But yet, and Coca-Cola actually is one of the big founders, or not founders, but one of the big financial donators to the American heart health organizations. It's like, okay, that's like if PETA supported poultry houses. I mean, it makes absolutely no sense. And I think people, I mean, at least what I see on social media, people are finally starting to call that out. But the problem is it's a little too late. Not saying we can't get back. I know a lot of people have a very split opinion on RFK and how he's going, RFK Jr. and how he's going to impact on the health side of things. But you have to understand the number one industry for lobbying is the pharmaceutical industry. Number one. And people don't also understand that the Farm Bill, the majority of those funds, like 73% of those funds, are going to the food stamp program, or I guess we're not allowed to call it food stamp, but anyway, food assistance programs, not actually agriculture. And in my opinion, and I am not the one in charge, obviously, my opinion would be to split that off, because you need some clarity on labeling. There's a lot of reasons why bills and acts get passed with a lot of vague verbiage, is because they want to throw an umbrella and just throw whatever they feel that it should fall into in that court. There's a lot of, that's a big reason why the Horse Protection Act, and we are not going to get into that today, but the Horse Protection Act, people are either vividly against it or vividly for it. And it's because a big part of that is the vagueness of the verbiage. The Horse Protection Act is not new. It's been around since 1970. They want to extend that umbrella so we can actually start catching these people who are mistreating and abusing horses. But other people are very concerned about that outreach. And based off of what's happened in the agriculture sector on the food production side, that makes the equine industry a little nervous, not because everyone's an abuser. That is not the case, but they're a little nervous because we've seen government overreach, and the best way to keep people sick and going into those hospitals and keeping that that constant money fueled into that industry is to keep people sick at a very young age. When I go and talk to people, I ask, like, hey, if you have a child versus an 87-year-old, who is the better patient for a healthcare system? It would be the child. A lot of people are like, oh, the old person. No, the old person ain't got but a few more miles left in her tank. The kid's going to be around theoretically for the rest of its lifetime. That is your long-standing customer. And so we've seen that the processed food industry, which was founded by the cigarette companies, have made the processed food, addictive, full of sugars, full of things that keep your body high fructose, a lot of things that keep us wanting to eat and never getting quote unquote full. And the reason for that is if we can keep feeding your body things that are going to impact your immune system, impact your cardiovascular system, if we can get you to being the point to you're sick, then we're going to be able to get you again on that constant health system of whether it's prescriptions, doctor's appointments, scans, whatever, fill in the blank of whatever treatment. So I think people, to bring this full circle, I think people are finally seeing that. But the problem is when they start doing research, there's a lot of jaded information. I did a video quite literally yesterday talking about food production, and I was responding to a comment that said, oh, well, this lab-grown meat is meat. And I said, nope, actually, no, it's not. Let's talk about that. Yep. I was explaining that, hey, these quote unquote, I'm not even going to call it meat because I feel like that's a compliment. These lab-grown substances are stem cells extracted from whatever animal they're trying to replicate. They get mixed into a batter that has fungus and a bunch, like 20 plus ingredients, gets put into a metal fermentation vat that it sits there in an incubator. And then what it does is it multiplies and these cells multiply and it quote unquote grows. Then what they do is they extract that, inject it with flavors, and then texturize it. That's not meat. That is a gelatinous substance with a bunch of really bad crap in there. And yet you're going to tell me that eating beef is bad for me? Well, then this one person replied with this study that said red meat is bad for you. It's bad for your cardiovascular and heart health, and it causes cancer. Well, if you look at the document itself, there is absolutely no scientific basis. If you look at the resources that they use, the majority of their resources actually stated that there is no impact of negativity of your red meat consumption and no linkage between that and your heart health. The study that was done back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s actually were, if you look at the kind of food that they were eating, it was fried food. It was fried meat. I can be a vegan, but if everything I eat is covered in batter and deep fried and corn oil or vegetable oil, that is a completely different nutritional profile than just eating straight raw ingredients. And I think someone else said, well, you know, if a cow eats GMO feed, then it's not real meat either. I'm like, actually, I did research on that, and over 72 articles. And I know you said that you've read about scientific papers. They're not fun. This is not like, oh, this is a Disney, like, oh, Cat in the Hat. This is very dry material. I read over 72 studies and papers, and there was zero significant differences between GMO-fed livestock meat products and organic. That's the kind of information that doesn't get told, because it's a lot easier to come on a screen and go, you know why meat's bad for you is because these GMOs, like this fear-based mongering is what grabs people's attention, and that's what they remember. It is so difficult to combat emotional logic or emotional reaction versus a logistical. Like, you can't fight emotion with logic. And you just have to get really creative with it. And that's kind of what we're trying to do, is bring a creative spin on education that makes you want to watch it. Rambling off stats, I don't need to convince beef producers to eat beef. What I need to do is convince the people who have been lied to and misled, or just straight up gatekeeped away from accurate information, why their food production is safe. The United States has one of the safest food production in the entire world. But these marketing companies are trying to tell you that we're the worst in the world. So far off base that it's sometimes hard to rein your emotional reaction. There's a lot of time I got to put my phone down and say, okay, take a beat, take a breather. Let's think about this. And how do I articulate this without playing into their game?
And I think that's like the hardest thing, is articulating it without playing in. And articulating it, like you said, in a way that is matching where they're coming from. Are they coming from a logical standpoint? If so, great, I'm going to match you with logic. If they're coming from an emotional standpoint, okay, I got to take these 75 research papers and make them emotional. All right, this is going to take a minute for me to figure out how to make this emotional, and how to find your personal triggers and stuff like that, which is exactly what the marketing companies are doing. It's exactly what they're doing when they're saying that organic meat is better for you than meat that was fed with GMO corn. And also, fun fact, that's why they're able to market it better and raise a higher price on it. Like, organic meat costs an arm and a leg more than just your ground beef at Walmart and stuff like that. And the thing is I remember in high school, like a long time ago, I did a persuasive speech over, what was it? It was like the mislabeling of our food products, and the fact that like orange juice has a non-GMO label on it, and like all of this bull hockey, and the fact that like these don't even exist. And then my most recent thing, what you were talking about earlier, it grinds my gears. How can you call this Beyond Meat? How is it able to have the word meat in there? How is almond milk able to have the word milk there? It is almond water. That is all that is. That is almond water. That is coconut water. Like, this is not milk. Milk comes from a breast. Last time I checked, an almond doesn't have a tit.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, that's my biggest thing right now, is like just not even the mislabeling of these additional labels, but the word. Like, look up the definition of milk. Like, I'm pretty sure almonds don't fall in that definition. And so how are we able to label it that
Absolutely.
way? And with the Beyond Beef and like all of this other bull hockey that is out there that, like you said, isn't whole food, has 50 plus ingredients in it, is like, people are finally, you stitched a video last week or something like that about this is going to come out way later, so you're going to have to like go scroll in Emma stuff if you're going to go look for any of these videos. But she stitched a video last week talking about like how people are finally waking up to oat milk and almond milks and how terrible they are for you. And I'm like, hello, yeah, we've been screaming this from the rooftops. Like, milk has one ingredient, milk.
Mm-hmm.
How many does almond milk have? Like 20. It's just, it's ridiculous. I think you and I could probably just sit on a tangent all damn day about this if we were given the opportunity to. But oh my gosh, there are so many things that just grind my gears as a producer.
Like the antibiotic free milk. I'm like, there's no such, for those who are listening, there's no such thing as antibiotic free milk, because it's all antibiotic free. Because there's no such thing as antibiotic milk. Same thing with your meat. If it says antibiotic free, that's very different than raised with no antibiotics. And that's how they get you. But yes, the mislabeling, I think that the beef industry, well, maybe not the beef industry, the ag industry saw what happened with the dairy industry on the mislabeling. And I think that they are realizing that we need to be proactive in agriculture and not reactive. It is a lot harder to gain that mileage back on being reactive versus staying ahead of the game, seeing what kind of conversations are coming out of the woodworks and setting those precautions into place. Again, like you said, oat milk. There's no such thing as oat milk. There's no such thing as almond milk, whatever. It is water that is sat in and grinded with that ingredient. Like, we'll use almonds. Almonds are thrown in a vat of water. You have to let them soak. Then you grind it. Then you strain it. And then you add a bunch of preservatives and flavorings in it to make it taste good. If I grabbed a carton of oat milk one day, when I looked at it, it had a 6-month expiration date on it. If something is in your cabinet that is not a pressurized canned food item and it has a 6-month expiration date, it's probably not that good for you. I mean, look, I know I'm blowing in an Aggie, but come on, folks, that's 2 + 2 still equals 4 at the end of the day. And it dawned on me, and I want to do an episode. I'm trying to get HEB to agree to it right now, where we go through and we look at different meat products, and then I want to pull up that quote unquote fake meat. Last I heard, they do have to label it as lab grown, and it does have to be on the front, but it doesn't. I don't think that there is a size of the font requirement, because that's the other. There is a loophole for everything. And that's how they get around it. It's like, okay, we'll play by your rules, and then put a little microscopic. It's like, look, 85-year-old Cindy Lou Who over here is not going to read that. She's going to say, oh, chicken, and pick it up and put it in her basket. And then they wonder why it tastes off or looks off, texture's off. Oh, it's because it's actually, this mystery gelatinous substance. And I will fight that. I think that was actually one of my very first videos that performed really well, was that we used a trending audio, I think it was actually from Harry Potter, saying that, oh, that didn't work for you, did it? And what it was a screenshot that I took of Beyond Meat's company and their stock price plummeting. I was like, oh, you think you could lie to the public and destroy the beef industry? And then it's like, oh, how'd that work out for you? And then screenshots. I got a lot of feedback on that, on the both negative and positive front. But I'll tell you, being on the face is, I've gotten a lot more respect for people who have been put into the public spotlight, because even though my accounts are not nearly as large as a lot of other people out there, because I'm talking about the not fun stuff. I'm talking about the controversial things. I am bringing up the idea that I try to stick to, is bringing up both basic and very complex issues that a lot of people, like, if you are the representative or the face of your ranch, you're probably not going to touch with a 10-foot pole, because it'll impact your ranch. And I've had conversations with people who are in the social media world that do really well. But they are, X amount generation ranchers, or, oh, they have a company or a business that they're representing. A lot of them tell me that we can't talk about the things like we want to talk about because it'll negatively impact our business. Me, I'm over here like, you ain't gonna phase me. I mean, what I got to lose, really? But because I have that mentality of, hey, like, I can actually talk about all of the fun stuff and then the controversial stuff, that it gets me into positions where I didn't think I'd ever be in. I never thought I would receive death threats. Got a lot of those. Been called all kinds of words in the book, both by producers and non-producers alike. And I think that social media and just being in the public spotlight, you get to see the amazing side of humanity, but you also get to see the very dark, nasty side. And you have to have thick skin. If you're going to be an advocate for agriculture, even if you want to talk about it on public, we need more voices. But I think that's part of the reason why we don't have as many voices, is because the activist groups, they are acting out of feelings, not off of logic. Trying to combat that is very difficult. Trying to articulate that without getting emotional is even more difficult. And withstanding some of the accusations and threats you get is even more difficult than that. So my encouragement to people is to share their stories if they're in production agriculture. If you want to get into production agriculture, don't be offended if people are a little reserved with you at first, because we're just used to vetting people out. Like, who are you? What do you want? I'm sorry, who are you with again? And it's nothing personal for the most part. It's nothing personal. This is a very welcoming industry. We're just so used to being attacked by opening up our doors previously, that I think more people are trying to get into the homesteading, and I think people are starting to actually want to ask questions to learn, not ask questions to get information to turn to a weapon later.
Which, thank the Lord. Like, that is one of the best trends that I am so grateful for right now, is that like people are really getting into that side of things.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a big thing, big part of social media. Like, we have social media to thank for a lot of that.
Oh yeah.
Because some people probably wouldn't have even considered it otherwise. And so like getting people, even if we're just sprinkling them into agriculture and they're not being a production agriculturalist at the level that like Emma and I have experience with, or that a lot of our audience is at, then like that's still great. Like, still getting them exposed, but asking questions
Mm-hmm.
is where we want people. We want people that are curious and want to understand. But the biggest thing with that is there's not enough people out there that are willing to answer the questions.
Or take the time
Is
to.
an area that I feel like yeah,
Yeah.
or the time. That's a huge part. Like, this is Emma's full-time job. Like, she does this to make her living. A lot of other people are like, I have all of these other things to do. This is the thing that gets put on the back burner first. And trust me, I get it. Like, I fully understand. The first thing that gets put on the back burner with me is the next generation Instagram. Like, it is the first thing that gets just put down when life gets busy and stuff like that. And so I am so grateful that we have people wanting to get into agriculture, but we have to be ready to answer the questions and feel equipped enough to. And I think a big part of that is, even as agriculturalists, following people like Emma that are doing the research. Like, I don't personally have the time to sit down every day and read 75 different research papers and like do all of this stuff, but I know that I can trust Emma too. I know that like if I have a question, I can go to Emma and she's going to have the answer, or things like that. Or if she doesn't have the answer, she's going to go look for the answer, because if I have it, then probably other people do, or stuff like that. Like, finding trusted people within the industry that you can lean on for that as well. Like, yes, go do your own research, but at the same time, like, I'm not going to say like go out and read all these research papers, and especially if you don't have experience doing it or know how to or stuff like that. Like, that's a whole nother aspect. It's just like, find people that you trust, that you know that like the information that they're getting is accurate. They're citing their sources, they're doing all the things. Like, you can go double check them if you want, but then preparing yourself just like as a person involved in agriculture to answer questions when they come. Because are we going to get questions every single day as livestock producers that maybe don't have a social media presence? Probably not. But if there is someone at the grocery store and they're looking at the meat aisle, I want to be able to walk up to them and help them answer a question as a producer.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that if every single producer did that, if every single person opened themselves up to just answering one question, talking to one new person a month, it doesn't even a year. I don't even care if it's once a year. You go up to someone in a grocery store and like ask a question or answer a question or something like that. Like, this world would be a whole lot different. And
Yeah.
it's those personal interactions where
100%.
stuff gets changed.
Yeah, and I think that in a world where anything and everything you could ever possibly want to learn is on one of these little blocks called a cell phone. And the internet has allowed us the access to this information, but despite that, we still have people who are so disassociated from the knowledge. And I think that even though we have the access, we have reduced education. And you can kind of get into the conspiracy theory side of all of that, of like, oh, it's on purpose, yada, yada. We're not going to get into that. That's a conversation for a whole different day. But like you said, that personal experience and talking with people, again, and that goes into your professional life too, even if it's not in agriculture and sales. The reason that I was out in the field was because I knew that you needed a face to put to a name. And if I could understand that person, their operation. I could also see what's going on their place like with my own two eyes. And if they're like, oh, you got plenty of grass when I was in nutrition, and I look over there and there's more grass at a golf course than in their pasture, I'm like, let's talk about what is grass. Like what defines as a lot of grass to you? Because I think that in a world of the digitalization, we've lost that human touch. And we are social creatures. We are designed to interact with each other. And I think that's why this whole influencer thing took off when COVID happened, is because you've got people sharing their life. You feel like you could learn and connect with somebody. Like they say something that resonates with you, like, yes. You don't have to wait for a live TV show or hit a record button to make sure that you can watch it later, or an episode to come out next week to feel that way. It's right there at your phone. You can go back to it at any given time. You can share it with people. It can give you something to connect with other people that you're friends with. And so while that's great, it also has lessened people's willingness to actually talk and use words in person, talk to a random stranger. I'm a very much an extrovert. Like I'll talk to a glass wall if you let me, and I'll think there's someone behind me. It's not. It's just my own reflection. But I'll talk to myself forever if you allow me to. But I'll use an example. I was in the NFR in Vegas, and I was there with a couple different companies, and so I went to go get something to eat. And it was early in the morning, and I'm on the carnivore diet. Do not eat at the convention center if you're on the carnivore diet, or any diet. In fact, it was awful trying to find food at that location. But so I went to this, concession stand, got something. I was checking out, and the lady saw my hat, and she was kind of talking to me. And I said, "Yeah, it's really hard when you're on that carnivore diet." She goes, "I've done that for X amount of years," and we were connecting over it. And she goes, "Hey, can I ask you what the difference between grass-fed beef, like, is it actually better for you?" And I was like, "Sister, how much time you got?" And I was so excited that she not only asked that question, but that she actually wanted to know, because it connected to her and her health journey. She's like, "Well, I've been told this is healthier for me." I'm like, "Actually, no, not necessarily." Or, "Oh, like this is better for me." Well, ironically, that has more preservatives than this one does. This whatever food product you want to put in the blank there. So that interaction, I have a lot more confidence that she actually took away something from that conversation versus someone who saw half of my video, took part of the things that I was saying, and then just like ran off with it. Because the fact of the matter is you can only put so much information into that short of time that keeps it entertaining and not too informational. Like there is a balance. And there's a lot of things I want to say, but there's a lot of times I have to sit back. I'm like, okay, what are the main points? Okay, let's stop. Let's re-record. Let's take more pauses. Let's cut this out. Let's splice this video, throw that away, because it's just too much. And if you get sensory overload of information, your brain is not going to remember anything, and you're just going to keep going. I get a lot of people in the comments like, "Well, technically," I was like, "Well, technically we can have a 15-part series to this, but we're not doing that. Here's like, if you want, if there's enough interest, we'll do a secondary video." But again, these are hours and hours and hours. I usually get up about 5:30, 6 a.m. every day, and I usually go to bed about 1 or 2 a.m. every day. And the majority of those days are filled with research, finding papers, talking to industry professionals. I'm like, okay, well, if that's really true, then where is that? Reading, oh my gosh, the amount of handbooks. Just because information is published by a big name organization or a big name company does not mean it's accurate. It does not mean it's factual. And the amount of, that's not. And it's hard when you were reading a paper. Okay, going back to the first example of carcinogens, and people were trying to say that red meat's a carcinogen. All right, let's read all these very boring papers of I feel like we're beating a dead horse. Like, let's just beat it one more freaking time. But it's really hard to read those without my personal feelings swaying what I'm reading. Like, I heard someone, we were at dinner the other day, and they said, I can only control the words that I say, not the way you perceive them.
Mm.
And I thought, huh, that is not only in a written context, that is also in a speaking context. And that's a research context. If I am hunting to things to fit my narrative, I'm going to read things very differently than if I come with an open mind and allow myself to be wrong about some things. And that is the problem with 98% of the information, of the videos, influencers, publications, articles, Facebook posts that you see. Is I doubt that like good journalism is practically gone. You have to come with a very non-biased, like, okay, here's my hypothesis. I think this is a good subject. I could be wrong, but if not, that's fine. Let's find the actual information. That's hard to do. I didn't realize how hard it is to do until you're in those shoes. But that's what we really try to do on Double E. And that's one of the reasons that we want to bring producers and manufacturers and everybody of all different assets of the agriculture production systems in, because we want to give them a platform to saying, hey, like, this is what you do. Why? Let's talk about it. And then someone with complete opposite management practices, like, okay, here, why?
Yep.
And I think that that's the only way consumers can make the best decisions, is if they get both pieces of that pie, and then they can decide what they think that fits their lifestyle and their either ethics or whatever speaks to them. In no way will I ever say that you should eat so-and-so or you should do so-and-so on specific subjects like grass-fed and grain-fed. I'm never going to tell you you're a bad person for producing or eating grass-fed beef. Personally, I don't like the flavor. Personally, I don't like the tenderness of it. I like the flavor. I like the, just based off of research, I have no problem with grain-finished beef. But there's other people who feel the exact opposite. That's fine. Guess what? You're eating beef, and that's all I care about. And you're not eating the tofu that's filled with over 53 million nanograms of hormones. Meanwhile, implanted beef is demonized as, oh, well, it's hormone filled. Well, first of all, it gets metabolized and will never enter into your food production system, but that's besides the point. What it will do is that even implanted beef on the counter has less than 3 nanograms of hormones, but yet you're going to tell me tofu is healthier for me? It's got 53 million. That's the kind of information people aren't getting. But they see these people out in California, and we demonize California a lot. California is actually one of the #1 agriculture producing states. California is a great state. However, you've got hubs of massively congested people into small geographic locations. I will let you put in the name of whatever town/city you're thinking of, that come in there and they are paper thin, and they go in there and say, oh my gosh, beef is so bad, meat is so bad. I do Pilates 1,500 times a day, and I just eat tofu and like 3 pieces of lettuce, and therefore I'm the healthiest I've ever been. Like, let's be real here. And I think that's what's missing. And I think that's what people are craving for, is they see a lot of the fakeness that's been pushed on them over the years, especially like in the modeling industry. You remember those commercials that they're like, oh, like how much editing goes into modeling pictures? I feel like people are getting tired. As a saturated market, and people are getting, these influencers are getting called out for when they are being untruthful. And I think that's awesome. I think people like, I'll throw out a few names here. I think Bar 7, I think Tucker Brown. I think the reason that those people are doing so well is because they bring a very real, especially Bar 7. I've met Erica and Cody. They are fantastic people, but I think that's what people love so much about them, is that they're relatable. They don't
Yeah.
hide things. They are very honest and truthful. Like, hey, we tried this, didn't work. That's what people want, is
Mm-hmm.
again that ability to relate to somebody. And I encourage people to make those relationships with people outside of their cell phone. As someone whose
Yeah,
their business is on
absolutely.
the cell phone, get outside, kick some grass, eat some dirt. I don't know, but
No, absolutely. Like you hit on everything there. And in such a saturated market where people, I fall victim to it often enough myself that I can only imagine what other people do that didn't grow up in agriculture. That like I fall victim to trends, or if I see something on like TikTok 5 or 10 times, I'm like, oh, hey, that must be the truth. Or maybe I don't automatically think it's the truth, but I'm like, okay, there's something there because enough people are talking about it. Like,
mhm.
what is this? Like maybe it's a new health trend, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. Like it's I fall victim to it all the time. So I can only imagine what people outside of agriculture are feeling and thinking when they see these day in the life videos or what I eat in a day from a million different people, and none of them include beef. So they automatically are like, okay, well, these really fit, amazing people aren't eating beef. So why do I? And it's just the fact that like the exterior markets are oversaturated. We are 2% of the population, y'all. We're climbing an uphill battle. And it's really, really stinking difficult, but that doesn't mean that we don't need to do it. Like Emma just said, it doesn't mean we have to do it on social media. Go eat some dirt and kick some grass. Go talk to people out in the real world. Like that's where the true connections and impacts are going to happen and stuff like that. And you know what? No one listening to this is going to have time to go read a million research papers or do all of the things. But I think like my biggest encouragement to people is to learn how to do it. Like one thing for me that came up recently, real life experience, was this whole thing with raw milk recently, and how insane all of these trends are going. And
Oh, yeah.
one of my best friends, and then another person that is in my husband and I's life group, he is also involved in agriculture, involved in production agriculture, is a huge advocate for raw milk.
Really?
And him and I got in like a yelling match at church life group, guys. Like, and my husband and I are the leaders of it. Luckily, we've been leading this life group for over a year, so we're all like best friends and very close and comfortable with one another. But oh my gosh, y'all, like I'm getting heated and red right now even thinking about it. And I have another person who's directly involved in that animal agriculture, and they drink raw milk and are huge advocates for it. And I personally had to go and like after we had that yelling argument, had to go and look at these scientific research papers because his argument was that it's more nutritious. And through the pasteurization process, we're losing vital nutrients and like all of this other stuff. And he wasn't concerned about my argument about how absolutely unhealthy that is, and how we've seen a huge decrease in just different diseases and different sicknesses that were passed through milk over the past years with pasteurization. He didn't care. He was like, I trust the person I'm getting it from. I'm like, okay, whatever, if you do, that's great. But why the nutritional aspect isn't any different? Like pasteurization does not do this. And so I had to go and research it, and y'all, it took me a while to go and find the papers that I was looking for, especially because once something becomes a health trend or once something is really getting pushed on social media, the amount of just saturation that goes out there
Mhm.
into the research environment to support that is intense. And it takes a lot of digging through a lot of fluff to find the research in there and find the things that are truly the facts. And like you said earlier, Emma, I was going in it with those rose colored glasses of like, I was looking for this one particular thing. And I had to kind of step back too of like, facts. What are the facts? Like facts on different research papers. And again, it was like nanogrammic differences
Mhm.
on the vitamin levels and all of this other stuff that these people are so concerned about. So yes, there is a difference, but it's not a significant enough difference that we need to be sacrificing our potential health and the health of a nation that doesn't understand what pasteurization actually does. Because people think pasteurization is either taking away vital chemicals or it's adding chemicals in. It's literally just heating up milk so it kills the bacteria, y'all. Like, oh my gosh,
About it,
it's
but
just one of those things.
we have we're at the privilege to understand that, and I think that's a lot
Yeah.
of times too is some of the things we think is very basic education. and you kind of laugh it off. But the problem is that a lot of people don't understand. Like, you don't know what you don't know. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, that's a great example. I know a couple of people who own dairies there's one individual, she will fight till the day she dies on it. And she's like, listeria is still a thing. You will die. And I mean, she's not wrong. I think I saw this, and then the exact opposite too. I think I saw this girl, she takes a very negative approach to her content, but that's her branding. She's a acclaimed medical licensed esthetician, and she tried to tell the world that beef tallow was bad for your skin. And I know that's very trending right now. And I'm like, I can attest that for me personally, the application of beef tallow has completely changed. It's a game changer for me, and I will never go back. But you know what I don't do is I realize that a lot of the products I was historically using that medical licensed estheticians try to tell you to buy was full of ingredients that you can't pronounce. I'm like, that has 15 syllables. Don't even know what that is. Like, what letter isn't used in this word? And I think that it goes the opposite way too, of trying to de-influence people, like the carnivore diet. There's a lot of people that were saying, "Oh, carnivore diet's so bad for you," blah blah blah, and selection of diets is to each person and whatever fits their lifestyle. I am not a dietitian. I am not going to tell you what to do. All I know is, for me, within a 5-month time frame, I've seen massively significant differences, and I love it. But there's other people, like I say dairy, eat dairy, love dairy. And then you have the people that come in and say, well, I'm lactose intolerant. Well, I'm this. Well, I'm that. And I'm like, look, I'm just saying, if you can, do it. Look, my beef nutritionist from college, his own daughter is allergic to red meat. Like, that's unfortunate, but like, that's part of what makes everybody different. But I appreciate you sharing that story. That's like, hey, people, and sometimes you don't know what people are in favor of until you have those conversations.
Yep. Yeah. And it's really just opening yourself up to those conversations and just willingness to be wrong sometimes and to just talk to people and all of the things. Emma, we have talked about so many amazing things today. I think seriously, given the opportunity, we could probably record like a Joe Rogan 3.5, 4 hour long podcast and just like rant to one another about all of the things.
He's a
And
golden
just cover all of the
egg. He's only
topics.
had one guy on there, and he was a regenerative guy, and so that is the goal of this, I think, to be on Joe Rogan and be like, all right, you've had crazy psycho head in here, like, let's talk about real production. But yeah, we've
Yes,
talked about
no,
a lot. Again,
absolutely.
thank you for having me on. Like, this is like, I feel like there's some points I'm like, okay, like, we need to check ourselves. Like, we're not here to talk about the corruption in the health industry. Like, we're here to talk about agriculture. I
Yeah,
catch
nope, I get it. Hey, I think we're passionate about the same things, so, I'm here for it. Emma, I would love it. Our last and final question, the question we ask all of our podcast guests, what is your one piece of advice that you would like to leave for the next generation of agriculture?
I would say, don't let the fear of not knowing stop you from trying.
Oh, snaps for that. That was so amazing. I think that just sums up everything that we talked about so perfectly today. And you guys, I will have every single one of Emma's links linked down below. Please go give her a follow, message her if you have any questions. If you want to talk about raw milk, you can message me, but I'm probably going to send you Emma's handle and be like, hey, go talk to Emma about it. She knows a hell of a lot more than I do. Or just all of the questions. As agriculturalist, she is a great person that, like, if you have these questions, go ask her. And you know what? If she doesn't know the answer, she'll probably go find it, or she'll do a really great video series on it. So Emma, seriously, thank you so much. I have had just such an amazing time today. And to all of you listeners out there, we will see you all next week on another episode of The Next Generation.